Okay. So I know we just have one agenda item on here, and it is something that has come up over the past week or two. There have been some talks between the Budget Committee and Town Council about the library's fiscal year 21 budget, excuse me. So just as a little bit of background, last week, Town Administrator Chris Cotta had asked some details from me about the maintenance of effort waiver process, because he said that was something that the Town Council was asking him to look into. So I did send him some information, and it is also the same information that I sent you all as a board, so that you were aware what that waiver process entails. The town administrator, myself, and the board chair had a quick phone call on Saturday morning just to talk about the library budget. And he had indicated that it could be somewhere around 10% that the town was looking to cut. So what I'd like to do is just talk about how that would impact our budget and what would happen in the case that we were actually cut by 10%. And also, as far as I know, capital funding is not going to be something that they are going to do at all this year until the casino revenue they have a better handle on that. So we were looking at having about $15,000 in capital, which, as you know, we were going to be spending on our siding repairs and any sort of substantial repairs that came up, and that is no longer going to happen. So just a little bit of background about the waiver process. The Office of Library and Information Services accepts applications for this purpose in the event that the city or town cannot meet maintenance of effort requirements. The waiver applications cannot be submitted prior to us not being funded at the maintenance of effort level. So OLIS does not act on those applications until after the town has officially said that they will not be meeting maintenance of effort. And the town would also need to demonstrate, in order to be granted that waiver, that all town departments faced equal cuts. So if we were being cut by 10%, then the police department would be needed to cut by 10%, fire department, DPW, town hall, senior center, all of the departments would need to have that significant decrease in their budgets along with the library. The additional piece of information is that waivers are not typically granted. They're only granted in the extreme cases with towns or cities who are in financial crisis. So past examples would include Central Falls and Woonsocket. Narragansett applied last year because, as you know, in library news, there was some significant discussion about their budget and how the town was not funding them for maintenance of effort. They were not granted a waiver last year. So that was something that they were not able to get. So I did outline in my document to you all the funding requests and recommendations, a little bit of history for fiscal year 21, going back to February. So we had requested an amount. The Budget Committee had actually recommended that our budget for our town allocation be at $587,000. And then the town council added in $15,000 for capital. I just want to note that the Budget Committee actually, in July of this year, when they were discussing our budget, said we're pretty much level funded as is, and they moved on from our budget. So there were no substantial cuts made by the Budget Committee for our budget. This proposed cut for our budget is actually coming from the town council. So the town council has not actually made a formal recommendation for library funding for fiscal 21. They only asked the town administrator for a waiver, and that upwards of 10% number came from the town administrator. So any questions so far about a little bit of the fiscal year 21 history that we've gone through, or the waiver process? Okay, so
I do.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry I had to turn off my video because my internet's not working well here. So library grant and aid, if we meet maintenance of effort, what's that exact amount?
So last year it was around $125,000. This year it has not been decided yet because the governor's budget has not been finalized. So we're also waiting on that from the state to see what our grant need would be.
But we're talking of upwards of $100,000.
Yes, exactly. And
So,
go ahead.
so there's no getting permission ahead of time for a waiver, which is what the town council seemed during their discussions to be looking for. They wanted to get permission to fund us at a lower level than last year, and they wanted to still get the state grant and aid. But instead, as you explained, the process is that the town appropriates the amount to the library. After that appropriation has been made, the state looks at it, and even if it's $3,000 or $4,000 less than maintenance of effort, the state will say, then you're not getting your 120,000 plus in aid. So it's there. If the town goes that route, they, in order to save $4,000 or $5,000,
We might have lost you, Carol.
okay.
I think we lost you, Carol. Hopefully she'll come back. But yes, everything she said was correct, Pam. All right, so she dropped out, so we'll just wait a moment until she comes back in to the meeting, and I will add her. I haven't seen her come back in yet. Let me see if. I'm just going to send her the call-in info just in case that is going to be a better option for her. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
another family member on a Zoom call, which I did not realize, and I've never strained my internet with 2 Zoom calls at the same time.
Okay, so we have you back. So the answer is yes to all of your questions. They cannot apply ahead of time for the waiver, and if they are applying because they short funded us a couple of $1,000s, there is the potential that we could lose around 125,000. And it has been around between 122, 123, 125 ballpark area. So that is a significant amount of money for us to lose. Carol, did you have any additional questions?
No,
Okay.
that was just, it's very risky.
It is, absolutely.
To save a few thousand, they may forfeit 120,000 plus. And of course, whereas we might be able to find savings to cover $3,000 or $4,000 under maintenance of effort, when you add to it the 120,000 plus that we'll lose from the state, now we're talking $125,000 cut to our budget, which is just not going to be manageable at all.
That's correct. And also the Library Board of Rhode Island, when they go through the waiver process and look at the waiver application, they need to see a clear path as to how our funding will be restored. So that's something that the town would also need to demonstrate. And to be clear, it is also the town who applies for the waiver. It is not the library, just because the town is the one who would be saying that they are not meeting maintenance of effort. So I did want to talk just a little bit about the impact on services if we did not receive grant and aid. At present, our grant and aid funds are actually being withheld until the town does have the FTR, or all of the budgets that are submitted for the FTR have the same amount of funding for us. So whichever one comes first will actually make it so that our grant need is withheld until that point. A portion, actually, all of our grant and aid funds are used for our Ocean State Library's fees. And so one thing that we really need to be aware of, and that the town needs to be aware of if they are going to pursue this waiver process, is that Tiverton residents would not be able to participate in the Ocean State Library's consortium, because if we cannot pay those fees, then we are not considered members of the consortium. This includes not being able to order books or any other library materials outside of Tiverton Library. So it would almost be like they have a local use only card to our library. If they wanted to go to Little Compton, if they wanted to go to Portsmouth, they would technically not be able to, or they would have to get a local use only card to those libraries in order to use those libraries. So, and that's to each individual library. If they wanted to go to Little Compton, that would be $25, Portsmouth, $25, and then a full network card is $125. So this would have substantial impact on library services to our Tiverton residents. And in addition to that, E-Zone would not be available. And also it would be no delivery for us from other libraries. So we need to make it clear that this kind of cut would be devastating to not only our library here, but also a direct impact on Tiverton residents. We have already had several unexpected expenditures this year, and they include additional cleaning supplies, hand sanitizer, paper towels, gloves, paper bags for pickup services, and other supplies necessary for our safe operation. We have always purchased a small amount of these, but we are definitely cleaning after just about every patron who comes in. We have to clean bathrooms multiple times a day. So those expenses really have added up. In addition to that, the library electricity bill has increased significantly. We did have an energy audit yesterday, and he presented a couple of suggestions as to what could be happening with our systems, but it actually comes down to people not being in our building, because typically when people are in our building, there's a significant amount of body heat. but our heaters had actually been kicking on because there was no detection of any sort of heat to even out the set points in the system. So those are temporary measures that we can fix, but we still have that increase that has happened last month in this fiscal year 21. The other issue that we had come up was our siding, and we've been working on this for a couple months now. So we were expecting to have capital funds in order to take care of our siding costs, but with the absence of those capital funds, our siding repairs now have to come out of our general operating budget. And this is not something that we would be able to put off, for a couple more months to see if capital came through. This is something we really need to do now before we get into bad weather season. And make sure that we're taking care of siding on a regular basis. We also have a staff member who did not opt for healthcare in, I have somebody knocking on my window. Hold on one sec. Can you see what they want? I'm in a meeting. Thank you. We had a staff member who did not opt for healthcare and they left. So our new staff member did need healthcare. And so that has been another cost that we are not necessarily anticipating for this year that has come up. A few other funding challenges that we've been talking about are the limited fines collection, that we actually depend on a certain amount of money for that in our budget. And fines have been waived from March 1st to September 13th by the consortium. So we're looking about, I'd say, 25% reduction in our fines and fees collection, especially with us not having the printing volume that we once had. We're also unsure if the legislative grant will come through this year. So we typically receive about $1,500 from Senator Felag, and that can go directly to operating. So it's something that we are really up in the air about. I estimated that a 10% decrease in town funding and the actual loss of grant need, if that were to happen, would be a minimum 26% decrease in our overall library funding. So a quarter of our budget funds would be gone. And I think that it's a very tough thing to think about that, particularly when the town council has been discussing how important it is to keep positions and keep jobs and not have to lay anybody off. And also talking about how the unions have not been forced to rethink staff raises. And we would have to consider all of those things if we were to lose that funding in our budget. So really, I don't understand how we could obtain a waiver when there's an imbalance of how budgeting is going on the town side versus on the library side in respect to the cuts that would be made and the lack of funding. So I wanted to sort of paint that broad picture with you of what our funding would look like next year if those cuts were to happen. I am definitely here for suggestions, and also I think that overall the Board of Trustees, I'll write to Kathy, of course, that we all really need to advocate for our library budget to not go below maintenance of effort in order for us to keep providing the services. And there was also a comment made at the town council that we've been closed. We have not been closed. Our services have still been available to the people of Tiverton since we closed physically our building on March 16th. So we have not been fully closed. Our services have been available, and our services are still available our regular hours from 10 to 8 Monday through Thursday, Friday and Saturday 10 to 5 and 10 to 4 respectively. So I think that us being here, being a department that's already back open, even before town hall has been back open itself, is something that the town council and budget committee really need to consider, us as being a leader in the community and how we have handled this situation and kept both our patrons and our staff very safe during this time. So any questions?
No, I would just add that, so a level funded budget, which would be a $2,000 decrease from what was originally recommended, along with the $15,000 in capital, we're looking at $17,000. And the capital for the library, it's not something we can put off. I think that's often the idea when capital is cut. Well, we can put off paving that road till next year. We can't actually put off fixing our siding.
Correct.
So with level funding and no capital, we would need to find $17,000 within our budget. So that would be a challenge.
Yes, and that is actually already around I think it's about a 3% reduction. So we're already looking at 3% without that $2,000 increase to our to our town allocated funds and no capital. So we are already at a point where we're looking to have to make up about 3% of our budget.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I think the next step, the town administrator, when I spoke to him, I think it was yesterday, indicated that he was going to send us, and by us I mean myself and the entire board, a memo about the waiver process. I don't know what he was going to put in there, but if I see that come through my email, I will certainly pass it on to you all. And I don't think we're at the point where we need to start, slashing things from certain areas of our budget. I think that right now, the best thing to do is on my end, for me, like we do not have a position filled right now here at our library. Unfortunately, the money for that position is now being used for healthcare costs and also siding costs. So it's a delicate balance of how we are making sure that if we are meeting maintenance of effort, that we will be able to function and take care of everything that we need to as far as building maintenance goes. We are a library. We have to buy books. We have to buy library materials. So that is something that we would not be able to do to the fullest extent if this budget were cut. So I think we're just being very mindful right now of our spending and only spending on what we need, as we usually do. And I think that we should definitely wait to see what the town council comes back with now that they have more information about the waiver process and go from there. That's all I have.
All right, that sounds good. So there are no other aspects of the budget you think we need to discuss right now before we know any more about funding levels?
Correct. Yes. I think that is the best thing to do right now, is for us to just be mindful of spending and go from there.
All right, Pam, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Just that I agree. We can't create a budget when we don't know what is going to happen on the town side. And we also have the issue with the electricity. And until we know that that's going to get back down to normal, that has a huge impact on our budget. Last month's increase was huge. So we can't really do anything until we know what's happening. So I think everything just has to stay the way that it is right now. And as we get more information, then we can sit down and we can start going through things and figure out what is actually going to happen for next year.
Thank you. And any other questions? If not, I'm available via email, and you can also give me a call here at the library.
All right. No, I think that covers it for me.
Okay.
So until our next full board meeting.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.